Alright, hello and welcome to my channel. I am Shiardia Garapi and I sew, I housewife, and I make my home. So I am a seamstress, a homemaker, and a housewife without the whole marriage thing. So lately I have been doing a lot of projects and not actually getting anything out and done and prepared and finished. I have been very, very busy as life gets quite in the way. But I figured I should come in and I should start up again and start the year again. So, you know, I'm not up to date, but it is the end of July, just coming up on August. And since my birthday is in August and I am about to get very, very busy, I figured I'd catch you up. So if you don't want to catch up, I'll see you in the next video. So for now, I guess, what I want to explain is that I have been working on building my business. So I have created a blog where I share some of my tips, how to housewife, how to homemake, what homemaking and housewifery really means to me, and seamstressing tips that I feel like, yeah, sure, everybody has, but maybe not everybody has access to. So a lot of what I've been doing has been researching videos and blogs and other formats where the information already exists. So I know, for example, that there are blogs that have the correct elevation type and how much water you need for a loaf of bread. I know they exist. I know they're out there. I've used them occasionally in order to fix certain recipes that come to me from East Coast. Usually because they're at ocean level and those recipes don't work the same as when you come over into the mountains here in Calgary. So it's a big thing. And for those of you who think I don't say Calgary right, it's never right. Go away. It's always wrong. And I've lived here 33 years. We all say it wrong. Nobody cares. Anyway. So a lot of things have been happening, and I've really not been catching up on things, but that's where I started. I started with my website, and I tried to get some blogs out, and I wanted to define some of the things that were really coming along, and so I decided to get involved in a course to teach me how to create a small business, because I'm very out of my depth. I have worked in retail for the most part, most of my life. For those of you who don't know, I have worked every fast food joint you can think of, probably. That's in Calgary, guys. So, like, I've never really moved anywhere. So this is where I've been. I have worked Walmart. I've worked 5 or 6 different stores in Chinook Mall that were retail clothing stores. I have worked at a food cart. I have worked at a fabric store. I worked in a restaurant for some time. I've done some construction. I have been all over the gauntlet as I have tried to find a job that I could do, that I could keep up with as a physically disabled person. I didn't succeed. I'm very, very sad to say that I had to sit through a very painful paperwork experience in order to apply for disability. I need help. I cannot function at a level that coincides with a 9-to-5 job. I collapse physically. I'll go to a job, I will push and do normal hours for a couple of months, and then my body will just put me to sleep. I will spend 2 or 3 days, I will be unable to get out of bed, I will be toast. So I had to accept that there was a problem and that had to take precedence over trying to get a quote-unquote normal job. And I've had to move on from that. And so creating new things in a way that I feel morally is okay with, that's where I'm going from here. So I'm going to hold a little bit of my high ground and go, I am not going to work for a company that doesn't see me as anything but a cog in the machine. I'm not a cog. I suck at being the cog. All of my gears have been ground off and I am now just a wheel. Okay? The only use I have in that particular field is a wheel. I don't drive the machine. I don't help the machine along. I am just the locomotion. that is going on, and that's not good enough for me. I want something more. So in those fields, I have had to leave, and now I am moving on and embracing the new. And that means sharing some of the trials and tribulations of what it takes to get this up off the ground. I don't think that YouTube is eventually going to pay my bills or anything, but I do think that sharing is part of what makes this so important, even though it's not going to have a lot of monetary value. So there's that. My TV's telling me that my controller got disconnected. That's fine. I love to watch YouTube for learning. I watch so much YouTube for learning. I have devoted hours of my time to researching and implementing stuff from books. I have hundreds of books on sewing. I have hundreds of different types of fabric. I have buttons and zippers, and I have instructions and notes and all the shebangs. And the one thing that I always wanted when I was a kid was somebody to be able to show me how to do this. So that made me a very social creature, not by nature. I'm not very sociable. I don't like to go out and socialize. Love to socialize within my zone, which is why the communities that I would go visit were usually quite friendly, and I was extremely ecstatic to learn from these people. So I spent some of my kidhood at a lot of learning experiences, physically trying to learn from people. And one of the constant mishaps that I was having was that I didn't drive and that I didn't have the ability to get outside of town. And so that restricted my ability to learn more from people because there's no way to get it, right? I couldn't get to people. And then YouTube came along and completely changed the game. And it gave a visual aid for people to be able to see and functionally make new things and be able to understand all kinds of seemingly simple concepts. Sewing is a very simple concept. You are taking a needle and a thread, and you are taking fabric and making something different. End of discussion. That's it. That's the whole sewing thing. Okay? But that is not to say that making anything in sewing is easy. It isn't. It's very difficult. And sometimes it's as simple as nobody telling you that you could put a knot in the end of your thread before you start. And then you can just clip off that knot later. Nobody says some of these simple things. Until you're in front of a camera, or until you're trying to show somebody else, or until you're trying to teach something, and you're able to show somebody else the seemingly simple things that come up. And I found that it was so cool to see this kind of changeover, because blogs are great and they sometimes have pictures and sometimes they have little clips of videos, but it isn't as easy to explain in words what you did versus hey, look, did you see it go through the machine like that? You saw how I held that corner with some tweezers? Yeah, super smart. Little things like that. But I struggle a great deal because I'm a little bit different, so I don't have any great knowledge that I can pass on. Little knowledges. If you, for example, have a bit of a numb hand issue, you can't hold things as easily when you're sewing. Two things I have a quick tip for you. One, take an elastic band, one of those big, stupid, chonky rubber ones, okay, and put it around the base of your sewing foot. You're going to put it so that it's around this part, so that your sewing machine cannot go down further, so that it only goes to a certain level and turns on and slowly goes. And that's what you're going to stop your having to focus on two things at once. So that will slow down your speed to a level you can see. And then the second thing is stop using your fingers. See these? Useless things. If you have numb-handed problems, you're going to take some inspiration from the people who have 0 limbs and still manage to crochet items, okay? And you're going to pretend that you have no limbs, you have no fingers, 0, you have thumbs only. How would you get that fabric through carefully, slowly, if you had no fingers? if you work on that, so instead of focusing, oh, I'm a little broken this way, go to the extreme of that broken. Extreme, all the way over. Okay? And put yourself in the shoes of the person that you expect would be the worst off by trying to do this. And then think, how would they do it? That's how I've managed most of what I do. I pretend that I can't feel my fingers at all. So I lay my fingers and I pretend I have dead hands, and I use my whole hands to do things, or my whole fists, depending. It depends on my arthritis and how bad my hands are playing that game. And I slow down. Slowing down is not a bad thing. And taking that couple extra seconds to put a rubber band around the bottom will stop you from doing the lead foot thing and sewing too fast for you to be able to keep up with. Because it's the going back and having to fix things and catching up and fixing mistakes that you made already that are causing you to slow down and not finish. Right? So those are those little things that I know how to do. I don't know how to sew a perfectly tailored garment, but I do know how to make a dress that at least looks fairly okay. Like, I did some darts. I did put this waist in. I put pockets in. It flips. It looks like a dress both ways. And this particular dress has no top stitching. I managed to do the whole thing without any top stitching, so it just looks like this invisibly seamed together dress. Almost professional. I'd say slightly better than Walmart. Okay? That's grand in my scheme of things. All I am aiming for is not cheap, not fast fashion made, not superly quick manufactured, will fall apart in a week, which I hate. Okay, so all of these seams are double and triple sometimes sewn because I'm still scared of my serger. So we'll get there eventually, but still scared of it. But I zigzagged the stitches. I double straight stitched everywhere that has things. I stitched down my darts into the seams of things. Those are, oops, sorry. So those are where my skills lie, is not at the end where it's perfect and beautiful. I'm way back here at the, I know a great deal and have not been able to put into action as much. So my skills are kind of lacking, but I do know a lot about the little things on how to get from zero to something. So I hope to be able to share those kind of tips with you. And I've been working on focusing my mind onto what it is that I want to create, as well as what I want to share. I don't want to share my whole life. I don't like it. I think some of my life is very private. I think some of my world doesn't need to be shared with everybody, but it's so hard to be both transparent and honest and have a private life. Like, these are things that I'm coming into contact with, of how much do I want to share and how much is relevant. And that's hard. So I've had a very complicated life, and if you've been here before, you know that at least a couple of things, like I come from a complicated family. I have a lot of siblings, both real blood, true siblings, half siblings, step siblings, adopted and fostered siblings, and then the siblings that are just, you know, the friends who my mom adopted. Siblings. I count them as much as my own siblings as anybody else, because I have a very clear state of, you belong to me and you don't belong to me. So the mass majority of people belong in the category of, you don't belong to me. I can't take into all of the things that you need to keep your emotions and your mental and your physical and your psychological state even and regulated. That's beyond me. That's 7 billion people on this planet plus. I cannot be responsible for all of them. But I have a very clear statement of the people who I have chosen, or the people who have been, I guess, forced upon me because they're blood, whatever. But these are the people that I care about. And those people's physical, mental, and emotional needs and stuff, I try to keep in mind. And that includes all of my siblings, fostered or not. And that's kind of hard when you're trying to be a little bit more self-aware and what you can do and all that kind of thing. But they are so much of an influence on me that I can't separate myself from my siblings and myself that is trying to show you what I learned, because they were part of it. I learned a lot of what I learned because I was told very early that my blood siblings would die, and one of them did. And then I was told that my responsibility was all of these other siblings as well. I was supposed to, and this was so very difficultly engaged into my soul. I mean, there was abuse, there was harm, there was bad things, there was trauma, there was healing, there was health, there was family, there was support. So it's a very convoluted mess of all these things and how that becomes me and how that becomes what I know. I know how to do all of these things, not just for myself, but because of my siblings. But I don't want to share every moment of my siblings' lives or their failures or my failures. That's not the same. So as I continue on this channel and as I continue to sew and to homemake and to housewife, I'm going to try to pick and choose and try to show you the most important parts of what all of that means towards sewing. I watched a really great Q&A video from, hold on, I will look it up here because I just watched her. Here it is. She is The Stitchery on YouTube here, and I will try to remember to link that if I'm bad at this still. Getting to the descriptions. So I'll try to link it down below. So she's The Stitchery, and she did a great Q&A, and I forgot that sometimes it's not about what I know or about where I've been. It's about what you need to know and what your guys' questions are and what is confusing you. Like I have figured out everything that I can possibly do to get me to this stage where I can make my own clothing. I've made this dress in about, I think, a week and a half. And that's pretty good for a dress. It's super fast, especially on one that was confusing me. It took me 3 days just to figure out how to make inside out pockets. And I watched a different video on YouTube and a different lady who taught me. I think that's Katie Crafting, and I will try to remember to link that as well. And Katie Crafting did a reversible skater dress. And I really wanted to be able to do it. And when I did it, I lined up all my pockets, and then I had way too much fabric in between my pocket linings. So everything was really bulky. And so this dress actually has very bulky pockets. They're quite warm. But I wanted my pockets, and I wanted it to be reversible, and I followed the instructions. And even though it took me like 6 videos, same video 6 times, I got it. And I got a dress out of it that actually worked, and it looks really pretty, and it fits, and it's nice, and it's wonderful, and you have no idea. But that satisfaction is very fleeting. So there's another tip for you. The satisfaction of completing a garment can be very quick. So enjoy the process. I have to enjoy the fact that I am not fully capable or as speedy as my brain. So I have to enjoy the struggle, the process along the way. And for me, that means I put on a video that I like, and I sit there and I yell at my sewing machine, and I bop along to some music if I feel like it, and I go play video games with my roommates like Mario Party. Because getting angry and frustrated and sad and hurt along the way can take more out of your project, and so it makes you feel like you didn't get as much done as you did. And then when you complete the project, you don't feel like you really you completed it. You feel that satisfaction, oh, it's done, but you don't feel like I completed what I wanted to. 2 entirely different things. And those satisfactions are really hard. So you have to enjoy the route. You have to try to find the happy things that are in between so that when you get to the end and that satisfaction fleets away and immediately leaves you disappointing and wanting, because you want to do something new and you want to do something more, you are ready and happy to dive into that process. Because if you already enjoy the process of making something and then you get the satisfaction of completing it, you are happier and more wanting to go into and do another project. You want to dive in. You want to learn something new. It is very hot here, sorry. So that's another thing that I really picked up from this. I used to hate everything about how long it took. It takes days to sew a single garment. Can you imagine if I was paid exactly for how many hours it took for me to make this dress? This dress would be a $600 dress. It's a really simple dress made out of really simple, cheap fabric. But because it takes so long to complete, it feels like I've wasted time and money. Like I could have done something with that time that might have earned me money, but I also wouldn't have this dress at the end. And I would not have the money to buy a new dress because that money would have to go elsewhere. So like, it's a convoluted concept. And it occasionally makes me feel like I will never get enough done. So, our emotions are as tied up into all of this as it is. And explaining that part is also not my job. I have never been a therapist. Many of my friends think that I am extremely good at that. And it is mostly because I spent 10 or so years in a hospital with my siblings, bored out of my mind. I was able to read medical textbooks. I was able to read therapist textbooks. I was in therapy for a great deal of time and nothing seemed to stick. So I went through a lot of therapists, a lot of counselors, a lot of workshops, a lot of classes, a lot of camps. I did a lot trying to find answers. I knew something was up in my head and it wasn't coming out and it wasn't being able to be understood because I was so good at coping and putting my needs last. Now that I'm trying to do the opposite, which isn't as easy as it looks, I kind of feel like there's a miss. People think I'm very aware of my therapist and what I need, but it's also has its detriment of it still doesn't work. There's all the therapy in the world, and if you don't find the niche thing that works with your brain, you're gonna keep missing. And lots of people stay with the same therapist and they're like, yep, but it's never really been successful and I really just don't feel like it. Yet I moved on from those therapists, from those courses, from those therapies, from those I came straight home from a camp 3 days in, just called my mom and said, no, this is not going to work. This is going to cause so much more agony, pain, problems, whatever. And mom's like, yep, Kate, she came and got me. She called my uncles, got a ride. That was that. Because I know myself, and that was huge key, is if you feel uncomfortable, fix it. Like, if you don't like sewing, then there's probably something underlying that. What is it about it that is causing you not to like it? It's going to be hard. Guarantee that we're all going to have skills that none of us are good at. That's fine. But what is it that's making it uncomfortable? What's making it hurt our souls? Okay? Find that thing and try to ease that or make it as null as possible. I don't enjoy hand sewing. It hurts my fingers, no matter thimbles, no matter specific sewing techniques, whatever. It is this motion that hurts my hands the most. It is one of the worst things for my arthritis, for whatever this repetitive motion problem is in my wrist. So I don't hand sew unless I need to. I have learned all kinds of machine sewing techniques. I have learned to embrace top stitching. I've learned to embrace physical stitches and physical mends. seeing the repairs, the patches and things like that. Like, that's something I learned to accept, because I would much rather look at something and see the stitches than have it be incomplete for years while I try to get my hands in this position to sew it by hand. It has had its detriment. There have been some projects that are still in my room that I need to finish because they're hand sewing, and it's really hard to get the energy and emotion to do that. So I have the better thimbles. I have good needles. If you're hand sewing, okay, and you're having trouble, I bet you anything, the first thing you need to do, get rid of your needle. You went and bought it from the dollar store, bet you hate it. Bet you it bent. I bet that your cheap little thing, it doesn't look right. It doesn't look like a needle, and that the thread won't go through the eye, and the eye keeps catching things because it's a cheap needle. Go out and buy the good ones, the ones that look like needles. Go storm a vintage store and get vintage. Go to your grandma and ask her her favorite needles and where she bought them and where she can buy them now. Go online and spend 3 hours looking at different types of needles on Etsy and buy one of every kind and find the ones you like, because there are thousands of different ways for a needle to be formed and thousands of different ways for people to use them. I like to use embroidery and crewel needles because they have the strength to push through fabric even when my hands are numb, as well as to have the gripability of not being too small that I can't feel them, and not being too thick that they just poke holes into my whatever I'm doing. So I tend to use the embroidery and crewel needles because they are better for the type of hand sewing that I do. I also bought curved needles out the wazoo. So I have a bunch of these in varying sizes. And that's because then I can take this and I can hold it in my hand and I can sew like this and still make straight running stitches. But I can do the overlap with my hand, which is a smoother, easier to do than this one. Ooh, that's hard to do. My hands are sore. And that's, one of those things that you do to make the process that you don't enjoy better. And then the process then isn't as in the way. It's not as dysfunctional. And those it's really and truly, it's those little things. It's not about getting the best quality product. It's not about getting the most expensive needle. It's finding the exact type and material, the exact quality that works best for you. I love to work with cheap fabric. I know I'm going to spend hours using cheap fabric in ways that is not meant for cheap fabric, which means I have to do 3 or 4 things extra in order to make them do the thing. And I could have just gotten silk taffeta instead of polyester rayon. And then I wouldn't have these struggles. For anybody who's wondering why that's a big difference, trust me, it's just one of those, you'll find fabrics that you like and find fabrics that you like to sew with, and find fabrics that you hate and then find fabrics that you hate to sew with. They're not always going to be the same. I have fabric that I love, but I hate to sew with it. Hate it, despise it, cannot possibly stand sewing with it, but I freaking love the fabric. And then there's fabric I hate the feeling of, hate to freaking use, but it's so easy to sew that it's just like, this is such a satisfying thing because it's so easy to do. There's a lot of that middle ground in between. So in kind of wrapping up, I have created this business, this sewing and homemaking and housewifery, to explain all of the middle groundy things that kind of make me a jack of all trades and I guess capable. I'm not a grandmaster. I'm not in that field, but I am capable of doing a lot. Little portions. And I want to be able to show other people that even though you're busy, even though you're tired, even though you have kids, even though, whatever is getting in the way of your life, there are totally ways around, and that you can still enjoy the process and have the normal everyday tips that sometimes get left out of blogs. A lot of people say, yes, there's a quality reason why you get quality fabric, but they never explain why or what those qualities are. I don't like silk. Silk is very hot because that's me. I cannot physically regulate my temperature properly when wearing certain materials. Silk happens to be one of them. Silk bothers me, but it is very easy to sew. It's extraordinarily strong. It's such a good fiber to use as if you're a beginner. Silk is one of those things, it's going to catch. You're going to get a lot of threading and other things because it's a very delicate fiber, but it's also very strong. It's very soft. It's very breathable. Silk has a lot of these very good quality properties. And when you work with it, you need to know silk managements. You need to know that silk threads extremely quickly. Very quickly. So if you cut it, serge it immediately. You do not want to leave that in your sewing bin. You do not want to put that in your sewing basket and just hope it makes it okay. Don't do it. Don't. Silk threads. Yes, some silks don't, and some are high quality, specifically made products. But as a general rule, silk will thread. Okay, so it will come apart very quickly. So if you're going to use it and you're going to cut it, serge it immediately or finish it immediately. And you're going to want to finish it in a way that catches those outer threads. And you want to catch a couple of threads that are within the weave that is not there. So if you have cut a piece, you're going to want at least 1/4 of an inch of that to be finishing edge, serging or whatever. And then add your seam allowance. Okay, because that 1/4 of an inch is going to... it's not going to be a good part of your pattern. The serging you're going to have to do for silk threads is going to catch things in a way that makes it really ugly, even within your seam. So you're going to have to take the extra time and make the adjustments to your pattern with that extra little bit of 1/4 inch if you're going to cut it. It's also freaking fantastic for pleating. Silk is the best for folding and using as it is. If you want to use meters and meters of fabric and you do not want to sew it, you just want to like maybe sew a here or there, you don't want to pin it or cut it or anything like that, silk, okay? Because it will fold into place, you iron it down and it's very flowy, but at least it will very much stay exactly where you put those folds. It's the way it is. If you're not aware, silk is made from the very, very fine webbing of cocoons of silkworms, which eventually become butterflies if you actually let them keep their silk. If you don't let them keep their silk, they don't become butterflies, they become grubs, and then you get to eat them. It's kind of weird and gross, but there you go. That's where silk comes from. If you want a really in-depth view on that, go and look for them because they're amazing. There are so many different ways that silk is used, spun, woven, all kinds of things. But the reason I'm getting so high and mighty on silk for a second is that I don't work in it, ever. I hate it. I refuse to sew with it. It's very nice for like headscarves, but I can just go out and buy an Indian headscarf and it will be in the beautiful colors that I already love and it's designed beautifully and I don't have to mess with it, okay? But if I want like a dress or a shirt or a tank top and I want those fibers to be as good as silk, then I will go get satins and rayons and cotton blends that are similar to silk styles. I will look for the properties of silk within the fibers that I like. And then I will make do and whatever, fix however the pattern has to be in order to achieve the look that I want. Usually, I'm not trying to make myself a silk gown, so I don't have to worry about the fact that it doesn't drape the same as silk. Usually, when I'm trying to make silk things, it's for my hair. That's about it. And that's not that complicated. 4 seams serged into a square is fairly easy. So even if I bought a piece of silk fabric, I'd be able to do that fairly quickly and not have to worry about sewing silk for long periods. But if I want a dress, and I do want it to be as flowy as a silk, I'll go look for a rayon, which is a man-made fiber made from natural materials. So, I'll go with it, and it's fairly close. It's as man-made closeness to silk as we can get as rayon. And that's where I go. But that's not always where everybody wants to go. And absolutely, I think polyester has its place in our world. We've become very reliant on plastic types. But again, I don't find plastics to be very comfortable to wear. I am currently in this dress. I am sweating profusely. If I switched into like my cotton shorts and cotton shirt, I'd probably be more comfortable. But I'm going to suffer and I'm going to deal with my poly heat, and that's that. And if you like polyester, go hard, go ham. I get that it's a little hard to be like eco-friendly in the world that we live in. This is as close as I get. These plastics, these materials that I use would end up in the garbage if I didn't use them for what I'm using them for now. I think that's a waste. So I will use the fabrics and things that are around me, regardless of if they're great for the environment, because I will keep them from being worse for the environment. I'm not going to just go dump all of my polyester fabric in a pile in the dump and expect that to be okay, because it's not. Poly into the environment, plastics, problems, you know the deal. So I'm going to use it, try to, break down the process from plastic uselessness to plastic that's been used, reused, reduced, constantly recycled and upcycled until it then has been broken down into fibers that I think could possibly be used, to make new fibers, to make new things, or just to break down in our environment. Yes, plastics break down. No, they are not good for the environment. It's a thing, but we're living in a wasteful society, and we kind of have to pick and choose what we can both afford and what we're willing to morally accept. This dress and its scraps will not end up in the garbage for many decades. This dress will probably be in my wardrobe for many years. I haven't changed size much for several years now, so the worst that could, I suppose, happen is maybe a pregnancy or an extreme fluctuation in weight to the oversizedness, but this is very stretchy, and I've put it at a size that I could probably wear it up until like the 6-month, 7-month point of a pregnancy. I've been through this once before, so I remember the gauge of my belly, but that was about it. And then it would just, sit above, and I would look funny. And well, when you get to the end of the pregnancy, you don't care anymore, and you just want the baby out so that you can hold the baby and not deal with the clothing anymore. So I've come that far. I think that that's kind of my big, overall goal of life, is to use what is available at my level to teach and show and to help improve the world overall. Because there's probably some stuff that you've been sitting around going, oh, I'll use that for something. And I bet you could use it right now for something that you will wear, that you will love, or that you will create into a project that you will hate and, move forward from. So that it's not just this dusty pile sitting behind you going, ha ha, I'm never going to be used, and eventually I'm going to end up in the garbage and give you more guilt. No. I am a big person of recycling, upcycling, mending, making do, doing what you can, finding that middle ground. So I think that if we join together, and every time that I come back to this and try to show you the best things I can, I think that will improve the quality of our lives going forward, and hopefully make YouTube and the online resources a little bit easier to access for the weird stuff. Maybe it's not a searchable thing, maybe it's not exactly the perfect ratio, but along the way, somewhere, I might inspire the correct people, or at least help one person pick up a project and get going and be able to do something and move the world forward that tiny step. Because every day we're only giving this, and this is all we've got, and we got to do something with it, because otherwise our lives seem meaningless. What we're actually here to do, I have no idea, nor do I care. That's a philosophical question for people who have bigger brains than me, and I am just going to do what makes me move forward. I'm not going to let myself hole up forever. So I hope that this helps you pick up your projects, move forward and do something that you want to do with what you've got, and not be afraid of your skill level. It doesn't matter. Your skill level doesn't matter. But every day that you do something, you improve at it. And if you improve at it far enough, you become satisfied with what you do, and then everything else means very little. If you're satisfied with what you do, you don't worry about the meaning of life. There you go. But for everybody else, I guess the answer is 42. And if it doesn't answer 42, then you haven't figured out the actual question yet. And I hope that's what you can do. So I'm gonna get back onto my projects and hopefully get some stuff done for everybody to see and to work on and to share. And I hope that these little tidbits kind of gave you a look into why my life is so incredibly erratic and why I try to make it work anyway. So the only other thing I have to say is check out the Stitchery and Katie Crafting. They're really brilliant YouTube artists, and I think that they could totally use the community boost. Even if it's just one view from me, that's fine. I don't care. I'm happy. And if you have any questions that you think that I might be able to answer, ask. If I can't answer, I bet you I know where to find the answers. I bet you I know the blog or the video. So ask away. I'm going to try to make this more of a weekly thing so that we have some of these random answers to questions more often, as well as a kind of catalog of the projects that are to come. Right now, what is on my sewing table is, well, a question mark. I need some fabric for some clothing and things for myself, and I need to make some more stuff for sale so that I can start going to craft fairs, which is also on the goal sheet. So right now I have bowl cozies and bookmarks and pincushions and housewives, which are the little needle cases, and that's it. That's all I have right now is a couple of each of these objects, and I'm really thinking what I can make that will better other people and what other people will be really wanting in the patterns and styles that I have around me. I would like to use my stash up first, or at least some of my stash, before I start investing in getting more fabric. I did spend a lot of money on fabric for many years, and I should probably do the things that I bought the fabric for. So wish me luck. What's on your guys' sewing tables? Let me know. And if I can help, maybe, ask your questions down in the comments below. I always read them, so by all means. And I'll see you later.